We're live on the interwebs. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cackle. This is Entry Point's weekly interview series where we highlight small businesses, startups, and people who are having an influence on their communities and an impact on their communities. And also people I just find like generally super interesting. So I'm Emily Heinz. I'm the founder and managing director of Entry Point. At Entry Point, we partner with economic development organizations and nonprofits to foster inclusive and vibrant communities across the Midwest through research and community-focused programming. So if you want to check out any of our research, we just published an in-depth research report on the Detroit entrepreneurial ecosystem, which we'll be talking a little bit about today, and on the Ann Arbor entrepreneurial ecosystem. And you can see both at entrypointni.com. And joining me today is James Feagin, who is the Director of Entrepreneurship at the Rocket Community Fund. So I am really excited to have you on.
I'm happy to be here.
And even though you admitted that you had never watched The Cackle before. I was like, blast!
Hey, I wrote the check, though.
That's true. Yes, I do have to mention that. The Rocket Community Fund sponsored our entrepreneurial ecosystem reports, which we loved. So that was really awesome. So tell us a little bit about like your background and kind of what led you to Rocket Community Fund.
Well, this is not a podcast about Jesus, so I won't really tell you what led me to the Rocket Community Fund. But, as the hat says, Detroit raised me. Shout out to Fame and 313. Born in the city, lived, grew up on the east side of Detroit, and, have always just cared about my city, cared about the people. And as I got older and started thinking about, where I wanted to make an impact, neighborhoods and entrepreneurship were just important to me before I even really knew, what neighborhoods and entrepreneurship were in the way that we talk about them now. And so just through my professional journey, started getting involved in a lot of different things and worked in community development, worked in juvenile detention, and then eventually, settled on launching my own consulting firm that was working to build, back in 2014, that's like a 14-month contract with the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation to help build what became NEIdeas. And yeah, that was my first official entrepreneurship work. And through that, developed a relationship with the New Economy Initiative and eventually started working directly with them on producing NEIdeas, but also producing a lot of other kind of investment strategy, engagement, ecosystem building. Through that, worked with Rocket as a client and helped them kind of revamp their community investment strategy, including what became Detroit Demo Day. And last fall, they asked me to come back in as the director of entrepreneurship for the fund and kind of help build out a strategy for our next, couple of years of impact here.
Yeah, I feel like that is such a good compliment to we do a lot of our research on specifically on the tech community and venture-backed companies and things like that. But I feel like in Detroit, there's such a rich array of family businesses and Main Street businesses, I guess you could call them. But it's like April at Good Cakes and Bakes or Estella's Vegan Cuisine or like businesses that are kind of build up the vibrancy of the community there, where it's the tech community is yeah, that's great and all, but I feel like the reasons why you go to Detroit and that you remember being in Detroit and you like being in Detroit is because of all of these other types of businesses that are there too, that are a lot of them shine really through NEIdeas and Detroit Demo Day and stuff. So I'm always yay.
Yeah, and that's my bread and butter is, when you call it lifestyle businesses, neighborhood anchors. And what I'm really passionate about, I'm not going to go so far as to say this is my theory of change, but, take April prime example, right? Mm-hmm. She had an MBA already, and then before she opened the bakery and learned that so she could learn how to really run the mechanics of the bakery. Also went to culinary school, so she's like really adept in that craft. She was one of the year one demo day winners, and so now we went and met with her yesterday, and she's like, I'm baking this many cakes, but now she's been on to the Today Show, and she's got these partnerships. She's shipping all 50 states, right? So now
Yeah.
you have this neighborhood business functioning at scale where technology can play a role in that. Being able to build your team and have an e-commerce strategy, have other folks join the team as you start to think about how big this could really be. So I think that you know having neighborhood businesses have the chance to get the capital and the
Mhm.
connections to tap into a national market or even expand regionally is a really, really great thing to do.
Yeah, it builds so much like local community wealth too, because the business owners oftentimes like our and research that we've done, like the small business community in like a lot of different regions, it's the small business owners over 90% of the time live in the same area where their business is. So it's like really is like helping a neighbor and hiring neighbors and like adding a fixture of the community. So I am definitely a small business fan, and I'm a big April fan too. She's so good. And
Yeah,
when she was on the Cackle, we were like originally talking about like, oh yeah, I'll ask you this question. Then we all of a sudden just started on a tirade about Amazon and like Grubhub and like, and I was like, this is taking a turn.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Not to talk about April for an hour, which we could, but you know, I think us funding the next big tech unicorn is awesome. I
yeah,
think us helping April create 20 more jobs, 50 more jobs is also really
awesome
awesome.
too. Yeah,
For Detroit
exactly. I
moving
feel like you
forward.
need both things. Like you need
Absolutely.
both things to be successful.
Yeah.
So, what is kind of the focus of the entrepreneurship team at the community fund?
So, part of it, is demo day, which has been our core. When we started, even prior to our placement at the fund, we were working, to build out demo day. Now at the Rocket Community Fund, we set, demo day is a part of our budget, but we also have our grant making, and we've got a couple of other projects that really just help align our strategy for supporting economic opportunity for Detroiters via entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
But we also work with the Rocket Community Fund has three pillars: public life, um, employment, and drawing a blank.
That's what happens. I never
It
listen.
happens all the time,
I'll be like,
right?
entry point does. Eh.
Housing, housing, employment, and public life.
Yeah.
Uh, so the ability to think at the fund, not just about entrepreneurship, but if we're going to build inclusive entrepreneurship pipelines, we got to make sure folks have their housing stabilized. We've got to make sure that folks who aren't ready to start a business yet, or even while they're starting, have access to gainful employment. That
Mm-hmm.
in a household, the household income is able to support the time it takes to the inertia of starting a business. Because we know you don't make money overnight. We got to make sure you got good cultural amenities, good opportunities to be exposed to other things happening in the world outside of your neighborhood so you can really think about what are some of the additional landing places for your business despite the market or lack of market you might see outside your front door. So all of these things really work hand in hand to really foster a vibrant environment, rich soil, a bedrock for entrepreneurship. So we work with those teams to support them, to support job creation, support, as you said, wealth creation for Detroiters.
Yeah, that's a big undertaking. Many things. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it is true. Like a lot of the research that we have done on like small business communities, like in the Flint region, we found that like particularly like the black-owned businesses had like slimmer margins than other businesses. So a lot of times it's like you getting through like the rough patches or like making sure your household income is high enough, like things like that have such a big impact on like the ability for people to like start businesses and grow their businesses. So that's definitely. So you led the development of a number of entrepreneurship support programs in Detroit. So talk maybe a little bit about some of the challenges or obstacles that you see in the region.
Okay, am I frozen? Can you see me?
You are a little bit frozen. Do you want to click out and click in?
Sure.
Yay! This happens live on the internet a lot of times. Although one time it happened to me and the person, and so I was frozen, and then the guest had to take over the Cackle, which was lucky that it was Carrie Jones. Okay, James is trying to restart. the longest technical difficulty ever. But while he was doing that, I was actually going to share. We did like a little video of some of the key findings from the Detroit report, which hopefully, if we can like fix the technical difficulties that he's having, then we'll be able to bring it back in. But I'll show you. Okay, I love a data music video. If y'all don't know. And James is back. You like how I just went, I was like, cut to data hype video.
It's good to have one of those.
Yeah, I know. I was like, quick, and it was like uploading so slowly. I'm like, will it just play already? Okay, anyway, so we're still live on the internet. But, okay, so one of the things I was going to ask you was, so you've developed all of these different types of entrepreneurship support programs through like working at the New Economy Initiative, doing consulting, now working at Rocket Community Fund. Like, what are some of the obstacles that you are seeing within the entrepreneurial community, either like high tech or Main Street lifestyle businesses?
I mean, so the two biggest challenges, if we're talking about entrepreneurs themselves, both before the pandemic and since it, is talent. Whether it's a restaurant that needs a good bar back or a good chef or a good waitress, or that same restaurant really needing some solid accounting, because they want to open a second location, or they want to just better understand, how they standardize their operations and procedures. Like most entrepreneurs, they start something because they're passionate about it, or because they're good at one part of it. But as you really grow and really operate, you can't be an expert in any one thing at one time. So just making sure that you've got a team that you can really trust and develop to be able to trust something working over here and then be able to work over there. That's one thing. Obviously, capital, which we can go on and on about, and we've made investments there, but always continuing to have capital that moves at the speed of business, and responds to the needs. And then
definitely.
And then the other thing that I would say is just, specifically to Detroit, as I work, I've consulted, in other cities, our market's different. And so you aim for the opportunities that you see around you sometimes. I mean, we all do, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in Detroit, you're going to think about how people make money in Detroit and how people spend money in Detroit. If you're in New York and you're around 20 million people every day and you're in a global market, you're going to build and think differently.
Mm.
And, you know, one of the things that we try to make sure we're doing is support Detroiters succeeding in Detroit, but also help support Detroiters seeing the world. And that just like with April, right? April always, and she'll say it too, she always wanted to sell around the country, but there's a way that she thought she had to do that. And so, you know, through some of the capital helped her grow, but also the exposure and some of the mentorship where she was able to pivot from thinking she had to put cake mix on shelves and understanding she could actually bake a cake in Detroit and ship it to Hawaii.
Yeah, that is really like, how the hell does that happen?
Yeah.
It is like you don't know what you don't know when you start a business, like you said. It's just like then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I have no idea how to do this portion of something.
Yeah.
That is like,
or even though there's different ways to do things, and once you decide to do that, it's one thing to bake a cake and ship it to Hawaii. It's another thing that it gets there and it still tastes good and it still looks good.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so all the details on packaging, logistics, what to use, how to shift ingredients, all of those things, right? And so she's not only doing it, but she's doing it well right now. And being able to have that positive customer experience, that's what really allows for the sustainable growth.
Yeah, yeah. So the hype video I just played, the recent research that we did on Detroit's tech community, we found that the Black population makes up 78% of the total population of Detroit. So for people outside of this region, that don't realize that. But however, across Michigan, the startup and venture capital communities are comprised of approximately 65+% white men, specifically white men, not just white people, just like white men only. So it's like really intense. So less than a third of the venture-backed companies in Detroit are led by a person of color. And I did notice that even fewer than that are actually led by Detroiters specifically. And these companies raise just 1.5% of the total venture capital raised by startups in the city in the last year. So like, how do you feel like, or how do you address, or how should we be thinking about like kind of that divide between like the tech community and who's got the money and who's got the resources, and like Detroit's core base of like who lives in Detroit, who's from Detroit, who is accessing opportunities in Detroit?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to make sure I do before I talk about all of our pipeline work and strategies is there is talent in Detroit and from Detroit right now that has been neglected and has been systematically shut out. And I think that it's really important to acknowledge that it's not just, oh, we've got to make investments to build the talent. There are talented people in Detroit who have either been denied the opportunity or had to go elsewhere to get it because ecosystems were healthier. So us building from that place is very important. When you get within that, not expecting in a naive way the tech economy to behave any differently than the rest of the economy is a really important, again, fundamental understanding. So we talk about the tech stats, right? And I'm giving a long way of answering your question, but
no, I like it.
It's important context. When I spent these years building NEIdeas, Motor City Match, Night Cities Challenge, Detroit Demo Day, all these programs, right, that averaged 60-70% people of color as winners, over 50% women as winners. And then you get to March 2020, and most of the very businesses that I had helped support, first generation Black small businesses and entrepreneurs, were the most vulnerable. The government funded system to support them was being distributed, I'm talking about paycheck protection loans, was distributed through the SBA, through our banking system.
Yeah.
Prior to the pandemic. So on day one of the pandemic, the system that was designed to support them, 9 out of 10 SBA loans have gone to white male-led companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that's the distribution mechanism, Most of my businesses were dead in the water already because they didn't start their businesses not just with SBA loans, but with banking capital in general.
Yeah.
So understanding those structural deficiencies is important. And then that why do they exist, and then how do we overcome them is a two-part approach, right? So that's why it's really important for us when we're getting back to things like that to, number one, provide founder-friendly capital for Detroiters. Step
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not, when we started Demo Day in year one, we weren't even collateralizing or guaranteeing our loans. It was effectively character based. It's
Mm-hmm.
still some of the friendliest terms you're going to find for capital. So us being fortunate, as Rocket, Community Fund, with the support of our parent company, to be able to take that risk because it's the right thing to do and because we believe in it. That's a really important thing. Capital that does not have those barriers. The other part is what are the steps that we are taking, specifically when you talk about tech and high growth ventures, to make sure that our Detroit talent that has that aptitude and that aim has landing places and has support while they're here. And that folks that have that potential, but maybe haven't been exposed, are getting into those pipelines. So this
Yeah.
is where I come back to the Rocket Fund and some of our unique approach, our unique set of assets. So we've got, our education and employment team, whether it's to work with Connect 313, working to make sure that there's digital access in homes and
Yeah.
also at schools, to the fact that the Detroit public school system, our largest school district in this majority Black city, did not have a computer science teacher. So literally funding that type of talent to exist in the school system, and then working with a lot of our community partners that work in this space, whether it's Boys and Girls Club or Pastor Barry Randolph and his work over at Church of the Messiah,
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of the other grassroots organizations that are working with kids to expose them to entrepreneurship and small business, making sure that they've got the resources that they need. Us providing internship and exposure opportunities. Then you get to some of our recent investments and partnerships like the Apple Developer Academy, which is going
Oh
to be the
yeah.
first of its kind in North America. That's a direct talent pipeline for future startups in Detroit and future team building in Detroit. And so working to make sure that Detroiters get into that program, that they successfully graduate from that program, and that they find their landing spots as they now come out. Today's employers, if I give you an MBA from Michigan, you know what to do with it. If I give you a coding certificate for Grand Circus, you might know what to go do with it. If I
Yeah.
give you a Apple Developer Academy graduate, you may not know right now where that person fits in your talent pipeline. So us doing the work to make sure that we retain that talent that we're helping to develop and help them connect them to other entrepreneurs, help them build teams together, help them compete for demo days and compete for seed funding, understand rounds of capital, and what's right for them. And then other partnerships like Venture for America that we've been an investor in for years, not just locally but nationally, making sure that that talent's coming to the city, that talent, that Detroiters are getting into those talent pipelines, and that we're doing these intentional things so that what you see add up is a stronger tech ecosystem that's not inclusive, but that's built for Detroiters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is like a really interesting, because I think our research, that a lot of the research that we do is like on venture capital, on like tech startups. It's like basically on the structure that it excludes a lot of Detroiters. So like a lot of times when we're studying like access to capital and things like that, it kind of doesn't capture some of the avenues of like where talent is going and where people are going to access capital that's other than like a venture capital firm or something like that. So it's like there's a lot of other places that we see, like, and also commune angels starting up. There's like getting to be a lot more of these different resources and places that people are going to access capital and to access resources that are really interesting and really cool. And I think like hopefully in the next 5 years we'll be like, yeah, like we'll see a little bit more of the mixing happening. But so sort of now that it's funny, like I think when I wrote these questions, I was feeling really positive about the pandemic. And I was like, now the pandemic is starting to subside a bit.
Right.
And I'm like, no, like this week I don't feel like that. I was like, so now that we're still in it, in year 10 practically, what do you kind of think, I guess, looking forward at the next 18 months as we're entering like this new phase of things, like Delta's around, but like some people are kind of like, well, I'm vaccinated, I'm 100% can be around, be inside businesses, be doing whatever I was doing before. Other people are like, I got kids at home, I got all this stuff. Like, what are you looking at for the next 18 months? Like, what are you thinking about for like supporting the community?
So the main thing is, and I love Demo Day because it's given us, in addition to just this awesome opportunity to invest $1 million a year into Detroit small businesses and startups and investing in the ecosystem, I've now got 50 businesses that I can look closely at, that we've got to develop the deep relationship with, and that are very representative of the broader Detroit small business and entrepreneurship community. So when I drill in with the 50, and I've got a restaurant like Louisiana Creole Gumbo that without us had opened a second location, with us have been able to open a third location and have a food truck, but they literally cannot get that location open because of their staffing shortages. Then I can really dive in there and understand across my portfolio who's struggling in staffing and what are the common themes, and then who's doing well, because I've got some folks that are being sustained. And so we can create some peer-to-peer learning opportunities right within that group that help that group accelerate everyone's ability to troubleshoot through this thing. So that's a long way of saying access to good information about what's working for a small business is really important. And then everybody understanding that while we deal with these constant changes, right? And the variables that COVID is just one version of the larger market and the reality that change is going to happen constantly. How do we help our businesses build more resilience?
Yeah.
And some of that's capital, some of that's just being able to see around the bend and understand how consumer behavior is changing. If you were to run data on something as simple as how many businesses did curbside pick up before the pandemic versus how many do now? Me being a father and having a 2 and a 4-year-old that I can guarantee around 5 or 6 o'clock, somebody's asleep. So if we're in the car, where we go for dinner is a lot of times predicated upon how easy is it to order and how easy is it to get that food. So,
I also have a 2 and 4-year-old, so I totally get what you're saying. I was like, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not about to be dragging them into that place. Like, it's like the whole place will be burning by the time we leave.
Right, and so that to some degree, that was a luxury or something a lot of folks didn't think about beforehand, but a lot of folks understand like this actually works as a viable part of our business model to cater to customers in this way. And so anything that we can do to help our businesses understand customer behavior, because that's ultimately what we're really doing. We're never gonna, our grant making and even our relationships are never gonna substitute for revenue. So how are we helping our businesses understand how to maintain and grow revenue just remains the core function of what we do. And how to do that in a changing environment is really our challenge over the next 18 months to help them access that information in real time.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that you're thinking like that. What do you think is going to happen? This like random question. What do you think is going to happen with all of that American Rescue Plan money? Have you looked into that at all? Like, there's all this like background. There's all this like federal dollars that are supposedly going into different like municipalities and like coming to different like economic development organizations and like So people are kind of starting to think about like, how do we structure those programs? Like, what is your view on all of that?
I mean, obviously there's a part of my brain that looks at that because you want to make sure that, small businesses are able to not just recover and repair damages, but again, pivot and prepare for the future. And so infrastructure affects small businesses. Even when we talk about curbside, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does your curb look like as a small business? What does your patio look like in terms of your ability to go out next summer or next fall and have, good berm where you can set people up. So all of those things matter. But I also think that it can become a bit of a distraction because I think the city of Detroit got 400 million, which sounds great, but my goal is to make sure that my businesses are able to survive, with or without any grants or things that come, and maximize their return on investment when they get that capital.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of folks that took whether it's PPP or EIDL or this grant or that grant or whatever, and they might have perfected grant writing. They might have gotten additional capital to sustain 3 more months or 6 more months. But do they still understand how they're going to acquire customers today and how they're going to leverage technology, leverage social media, revamp their storefront, their floor space, acquire talent to gain market share, to grow and to sustain that growth? Do they have an exit strategy? Do they have a succession plan? Can they handle getting COVID? A lot of folks got COVID and had to sit down for a month, and it made them see that other people could run certain parts of their business.
Yeah.
So all of those types of things, redundancy or planning within your operation. So when one person goes out or can't get there, those are the things that I'm really a lot more focused on, because those are the only sustainable parts that we can really help a business, control.
Yeah, that's great. That is a great point. So the last thing I want to say, and then I'll let you go because I know we're over time, is when is the next demo days? You guys have it coming up, I think, in like 6 days, I think.
September 24th at 7 p.m. We will be broadcasting the 2021 Demo Day reveal. And also at 7:30, we're going to be going live on Instagram to announce the People's Choice winners. So best thing to do, go to DetroitDemoDay.com right now. You can sign up for all of our alerts, like Detroit Demo Day on Instagram. Beginning on Monday, September 20th, we're going to have the 15 finalists up where you can vote for the People's Choice. So make sure that you vote for folks, learn about these businesses. They've worked really, really hard.
Yeah.
We had a great platform help us with them recording digital pitches this year. And we had to do things a bit differently, but we're really excited about this year. And we might have some special announcements that night.
Cool.
Yeah. So
I love it. You guys had so many good companies this year too, especially like there's like so many like friends of the fam are in there that I'm like, yay. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, so everybody can go to, we'll put a comment in the link, we'll put the link in the comments of like Detroit Demo Day. Check those out, and that's on the 24th. And well, it was so great talking to you today.
Likewise.
I love hearing more about like everything that you're doing in Detroit. It's so like exciting.
Let's do this again.
Yeah. Okay. I will talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.